You're standing at the edge of a quarter-acre plot behind a farmhouse in Geauga County, Ohio, in the third week of October, and the man standing next to you just handed you a bank deposit slip. Not a projection, not an estimate, an actual deposit slip from the previous Friday showing $1,340 deposited in a single week from produce sales at 2 local markets and 4 direct household accounts. He does this every week. He has been doing this every week for 11 years. His garden has never failed a harvest. It has never required irrigation beyond rainfall. It has never been treated with a single synthetic input of any kind. And he spends, by his own accounting tracked in a small ledger he keeps on a nail by the back door, an average of 1 hour and 40 minutes per week maintaining it from April through November and less than 30 minutes per week from December through March. $5,000 a month, 1 hour and 40 minutes a week, a quarter-acre of land, and a layered planting system so productive and so self-sustaining that when a researcher from Ohio State University's Agricultural Extension Program visited in 2019 and spent 2 days documenting the plot, she returned to her department and recommended that the system be incorporated into the Extension Program's small farm curriculum. Her department head rejected the recommendation. His stated reason was that the system was too labor-light to qualify as a replicable agricultural model under the Extension Program's existing framework for small farm viability assessment. Too labor-light, a system that produces $5,000 a month from a quarter acre, was rejected from a program designed to help small farmers become viable because it required too little work to fit the model. The model that the Extension Program uses to assess viability was written in 1987 with direct input from the Ohio Farm Bureau, which receives the majority of its operating funding from agricultural input manufacturers, meaning the companies that sell seeds, fertilizers, pesticides, and equipment. A garden that needs none of those things does not fit a viability model written by the people selling them. The researcher who made the recommendation left the Extension Program 8 months later. She now consults independently for small farm operations in 4 states. She told me this story herself. Here is the number that changes everything. The average American small farm operation of under 5 acres generates $1,200 per acre annually, according to the USDA's most recent census of agriculture. The Geauga County system generates $20,000 per acre annually from the same soil, the same rainfall, and the same growing season, using no purchased inputs beyond the initial establishment cost of $340 spent 11 years ago on perennial plant stock. The USDA number assumes purchased seed, purchased fertilizer, purchased pest management, and significant labor hours. The Geauga County number assumes almost none of those things because the system was designed from the beginning to eliminate dependency on purchased inputs, the same way the earth tube was designed to eliminate dependency on purchased cooling, and the wet motor was designed to eliminate dependency on purchased fuel. The Amish didn't stumble into this. They engineered it over generations using an observational precision that agricultural science is only now beginning to describe with the vocabulary it deserves. The system is called a food forest in modern permaculture literature, though the Amish in Geauga County have never used that term. They call it the layered garden, and the principle behind it is as simple as walking into any mature woodland and looking up. A forest does not require irrigation. It does not require fertilizer. It does not require pest management. It does not require replanting. It produces an enormous quantity of biological output every year from nothing but sunlight, rainfall, and the internal nutrient cycling of its own decomposing matter. It has been doing this without human assistance for millions of years. The layered garden takes that same architecture and replaces the forest species with food-producing species arranged in the same vertical structure. 7 layers. That is the entire system. The canopy layer consists of full-sized fruit and nut trees. In the Geauga County plot, these are 3 apple varieties selected for staggered ripening across a 10-week window, 2 pear trees, and a black walnut at the northern edge where its allelopathic root chemistry, which suppresses competing plant growth, is used deliberately to manage the boundary rather than fought against as a problem. These trees were planted in year 1. They require no annual replanting, no irrigation once established, and no fertilization beyond what the layers beneath them provide. Their annual yield in the Geauga County plot runs approximately 800 pounds of combined fruit and nut production. The sub-canopy layer sits beneath the fruit trees and consists of dwarf and semi-dwarf fruit varieties that produce in the partial shade the canopy creates. Dwarf plum, quince, and a heritage mulberry variety that the family has been propagating from cuttings for 3 generations. The mulberry is significant. It produces fruit for 10 weeks continuously beginning in early June, requires 0 maintenance of any kind once established, and generates what the man in Geauga County described as the most reliable cash crop in the entire plot, because it ripens before most summer fruit reaches market and commands premium pricing at every farmer's market in a 30-mile radius from the 3rd week of June through the end of August. The shrub layer produces the highest diversity of marketable product in the system. Currants in 3 colors, gooseberries, elderberries, haskap berries, and a heritage variety of American highbush blueberry that the family sources from a single elderly grower in Ashtabula County who has been maintaining the original stock for 40 years. These shrubs were established in years 1 and 2. They require no replanting, minimal pruning conducted during the 30-minute winter maintenance window, and no pest management because the system's structural diversity prevents the monoculture conditions that make pest pressure economically significant. The herbaceous layer is where the system generates its highest per square foot revenue and where the design becomes most sophisticated. This layer is planted in what the Geauga County family calls the guild system, a term that maps directly onto what modern permaculture calls companion planting guilds, but which this family arrived at through observation rather than any published framework. Each fruit tree in the canopy layer is surrounded by a specific combination of herbaceous plants selected for 4 simultaneous functions. Nitrogen fixation through leguminous root systems that feed the trees without purchased fertilizer. Dynamic accumulation, meaning deep-rooted plants that mine subsoil minerals and deposit them in their leaves, which then decompose on the surface. Pest confusing through aromatic compounds that disrupt the host-finding behavior of pest insects, and direct marketable yield from the herbaceous plants themselves. The guild around each apple tree in the Geauga County plot contains comfrey, which accumulates potassium and phosphorus, and whose leaves are harvested 3 times annually and sold dried to herbal suppliers at $18 per pound. Yarrow, which attracts predatory insects that control aphid populations, and whose flowers are sold fresh to florists and dried to herb buyers. Chives, whose continuous harvest of both leaf and flower generates weekly farmers' market revenue from April through October, and a ground cover of creeping thyme that suppresses annual weeds, eliminates the need for any mechanical cultivation beneath the trees, and is harvested in bulk once annually for sale to a regional food distributor who supplies it to restaurant accounts across northeastern Ohio. The revenue from the herbaceous guild alone in the Geauga County plot ran $14,200 in 2022, according to the ledger the man keeps on the nail by his back door. From plants that were established in the first 2 years and have required no replanting in 11 years of continuous harvest. Now here is where the institutional suppression of this system stops being a matter of program funding and starts being a matter of deliberate policy with a documented financial motive. The American agricultural input industry, meaning the companies that manufacture and sell synthetic fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, and hybrid or patented seed varieties, generated $92 billion in domestic revenue in 2022. That revenue depends entirely on a farming model that requires annual purchased inputs. A farmer who plants a layered perennial system in year 1 and harvests from it for 40 years without purchasing a single input in years. 2 through 40 represents a total lifetime revenue loss to that industry of every dollar he would otherwise have spent on seed, fertilizer, and pest management across 4 decades of annual crop production. The USDA's Agricultural Extension System, which operates through land-grant universities in every state and is theoretically designed to provide independent research-based guidance to American farmers, receives a substantial portion of its research funding through cooperative agreements with private agricultural companies. A 2021 analysis published through the Food and Environment Reporting Network examined funding disclosures across 14 land-grant university agricultural departments and found that 61% of externally funded research projects involved at least one private agricultural input company as a funding partner. Research into perennial polyculture systems, which is the academic term for what the Amish in Geauga County call the layered garden, represented less than 0.3% of total externally funded agricultural research across all 14 institutions combined. The science of growing food in self-sustaining perennial systems that require no purchased inputs receives 0.3% of the research funding at the institutions whose entire purpose is to advance American agricultural knowledge. The science of growing food in annual monocultures that require maximum purchased inputs receives the remaining 99.7%. The people funding the research are the people selling the inputs. The gap between those two numbers is not a research priority decision. It is a purchasing decision made by an industry protecting a $92 billion annual revenue stream. The Rodale Institute in Emmaus, Pennsylvania, which is one of the few research organizations operating outside that funding structure, has been running a farming systems trial comparing conventional input-dependent agriculture with organic and perennial systems since 1981. Their 40-year dataset, the longest-running side-by-side comparison of farming systems in American agricultural research, shows that perennial and polyculture systems match or exceed conventional yields after a 3-year establishment period, require 45% less energy input, generate 40% less greenhouse gas, and produce measurably higher soil organic matter every year while conventional systems deplete it. The Rodale trial has been running for 40 years. It has been cited in peer-reviewed literature 847 times. It has been cited in USDA policy documents 0 times. 0. 40 years. 847 academic citations. 0 policy citations. That number represents a decision made repeatedly by people who understood exactly what they were deciding. Here is what the establishment phase looks like for someone starting from a quarter acre of lawn or unused land. The Year 1 establishment cost in the Geauga County model runs between $300 and $500 depending on whether you source fruit trees bare root, which is significantly cheaper than container grown and performs identically after the first season. Bare root apple and pear trees cost between $15 and $30 each from regional nurseries. 3 apple trees and 2 pears at an average of $22 each puts you at $110 for the canopy layer. 3 currant bushes, 2 elderberry starts, and 2 haskap plants at an average of $12 each adds $84. The herbaceous guild plants, comfrey root divisions, yarrow plugs, chive divisions, and thyme starts run approximately $60 for enough material to plant the guilds around all 5 canopy trees. Total establishment cost for the productive layers is $254. Add $40 for a broad fork to establish initial planting holes without tilling, which destroys the fungal networks the system depends on, and $30 for a bulk purchase of wood chip mulch for the establishment year, after which the system generates its own mulch from leaf fall and pruning material. Total first-year investment is $324, which rounds to the $340 the man in Geauga County spent in Year 1 when accounting for a replacement tree and an additional shrub variety he added in spring of the establishment year. In Year 1, the system produces minimal marketable yield. The herbaceous layer begins producing harvestable material by midsummer. Realistic first-year revenue runs between $200 and $600 depending on market access. In Year 2, the shrub layer begins producing. Revenue typically reaches $1,500 to $2,500. In Year 3, the canopy trees begin contributing meaningful yield and the system crosses into full production. From Year 3 onward, the Geauga County model projects and the 11-year ledger on the nail by the back door confirms consistent monthly revenue between $4,200 and $5,800 depending on seasonal variation and market conditions. The man in Geauga County has a waiting list of 12 household accounts who want weekly produce boxes and whom he cannot currently supply because his quarter acre is already committed. He has declined to expand because expansion would require him to spend more than 2 hours a week on the garden, and he has other things to do with his time. He said this without irony. A man generating $5,000 a month from 1 hour and 40 minutes of weekly work has made a rational decision not to work more. He considers the current arrangement sufficient. He is correct. The system works in any USDA hardiness zone from 4 through 9, with species selection adjusted for local climate. It works on flat land and moderate slopes. It works in full sun and partial shade with adjusted species selection. It works on land that has been conventionally farmed and depleted, though establishment in depleted soil benefits from an initial application of compost that adds $60 to $80 to the first-year cost. The minimum workable plot size is 1/10 of an acre, approximately the size of a standard suburban backyard, which produces proportionally lower revenue but still generates between $400 and $700 monthly from year 3 onward from a space most Americans are currently paying a lawn service to maintain. A lawn service. Americans spend $105 billion annually maintaining grass that produces nothing. The quarter acre behind the farmhouse in Geauga County spent 11 years becoming a system that produces $5,000 a month and needs less attention than a lawn. The decision to grow grass instead of food on the land surrounding American homes was not a natural cultural evolution. It was the result of a post-war landscaping industry, a chemical lawn care industry, and a suburban planning framework that all arrived simultaneously in the late 1940s and that collectively transformed the most productive land in America, the backyard of every home on every residential street in the country, into a monoculture of non-food producing grass, requiring continuous purchased chemical inputs to maintain its non-productive uniformity. The Amish never participated in that transformation because they never needed anyone to tell them what land was for. The man in Geauga County walked me around the entire quarter acre before I left. It took 11 minutes because the paths through the system wind between the guilds and there is something to look at every few feet. He showed me the comfrey crowns already retreating for winter and told me they would be harvestable again by the 3rd week of April. He showed me the mulberry trunk, which is now 6 inches in diameter and will outlive both of us. He showed me the ledger nail by the back door on the way out and told me the system had paid for itself in the first 23 days of its 3rd year and had not cost him $1 since. 11 years, $340 1 hour and 40 minutes a week, and a deposit slip every Friday that would cover the mortgage payment on the house. Most of the people reading this are currently working 40 hours a week to afford. The layered garden is not a secret in Geauga County. Every farm in that community runs some version of it. It has been running in those communities since before the USDA existed, before the agricultural extension system existed, before the $92 billion input industry existed that now funds the research programs that have spent 40 years pretending this system is too labor-light to be worth studying. The land behind your house already knows how to do this. It has been doing it in every forest that has ever grown on this continent without anyone's help. All the Amish did was look at what the forest was already doing and decide to eat it. Drop your state in the comments and tell me how much land you have, even if it is only a backyard, even if it is only a side yard, even if it is only a strip along a fence line, because every one of those spaces is a version of what sits behind that farmhouse in Geauga County, waiting to become something that pays you instead of costs you. Tell me what you currently grow, if anything, and what has stopped you from growing more. Because the answer to that second question is almost never the land and almost never the money and almost always someone told you that wasn't true.